Hello, welcome back to the Tree of Life podcast. My name's Kubi May, and this is my co-host Jacob Todson. Today we're going to be talking about Lughnasadh.
Just like you.
I couldn't tell the difference between
I
myself
don't think
and
anyone
you
else
now.
could tell either. I wasn't mocking Kubi. I was simply trying to get her to start this episode, and she was like, you just do it for me. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do it in your voice then. So that's how we're going to start today's episode. I'm a bit loopy. I just got done with a vision quest. So we're here. We're making a podcast episode.
Hey, we're going to roll with it.
Yeah, so Kubi's the one with notes today. So I'm just going to be that crazy dude that's just like going to throw out some gibberish every now and then. And it's a little bit more in your category of things anyways, because we're going to be talking about Lughnasadh.
Yes. Yeah. That's in the old Celtic ballpark, isn't it? Yeah, we had a really lovely Lughnasadh celebration here in Glastonbury. We actually had summer. Summer appeared in England for a few weeks, and with perfect timing, we gathered the community here out on the land, and we baked our first ever experimental loaf of bread, which I've never baked bread before. It was a really lovely, wholesome
Like
experience.
you bake the bread.
Me and my housemate did,
Okay.
yeah. And it's the idea of it's an old folklore tradition of doing a sort of tear and share. So you bake a big loaf of bread for the community, and we did it as a sun wheel because it's about celebrating Lu, who is the god of the sun and light, hence Lughnasadh, or Lughnasadh as it's correctly pronounced, and that literally means assembly of Lu. So it's a time of year that is all about celebrating him and celebrating the community coming together and looking at achievements and things like that. So we thought we'd bake a big old loaf of bread, and we'd take some honey mead, and everyone bought a little bit of food each from the community, and we gathered in the field and had a lovely fire, and everyone tore off a little bit of bread and shared what they were proud of within themselves, what achievements that they'd sort of made this year so far. So at this time of year with the Celts, it would have been the first harvest. So it's the time of sort of looking at what you've created from the land, and looking at how successful your first harvest was. So it's a good check-in point to do with yourself about how successful you've been, with your achievements. Oh, there's Zorro.
Yeah, I was just trying to do some research because I honestly couldn't remember. My research into Norse paganism and all that stuff, like hardcore, was a couple of years ago before I started doing my own research into Scotland and everything like that. But from all my research into like the Norse text and everything, there are so few mentionings of any holidays outside of the Midsummer and Yule.
Yeah.
And so I was just doing like a double check here to see if there was like a historic holiday in August. And there's something called a Sensommerblot, but I don't know if that's historic. It could be one of those things that was mentioned one time. And just anything when it comes to the Scandinavian and the Norse is it might have been a festival done by one community. Like there could have been one community that did this festival, and we have that reference of that one name, but we don't really know anything past that. I know. What?
I was going to say that's really interesting. What was the theme of that celebration? Was it similar sort of thing, or?
Well, I think it's tied to Thor and Sif. Which kind of makes sense. Thor, being more like the kind of the war god, traveling out, battling giants. In the Viking age, going out and doing the raids in the summer. These are the summer months to go out and do the work and raid and pillage and all that stuff for the Viking age. And then Sif being, the wife of Thor, and her golden hair, being so beautiful and tied to the fields. And so there's something there.
Yeah.
But I think the theme, I think Midsummer still was like the primary summer holiday for sure. And then there would probably have been local celebrations. But just looking at, history in general, this time of year was about the fields, it was about work. And so any kind of thing around that, I think, even like weddings, weddings probably would have been performed, in the summer as well. Like many of the weddings now are performed like late summer into autumn or spring. So there probably been a lot of cultural things going on as well, like little small festivals at this time of year.
Yeah, I suppose it's just everyone would have been out on the land, wouldn't they? Everyone would have been like competing, almost showing off their harvests and things like that. So it makes sense that would have been a running theme. And like you said, a natural continuation of the midsummer celebrations.
I mean, shoot, even here in the States now, Like, Kentucky just had their Kentucky State Fair, and I know there's so many different fairs and festivals that happen in August. Like Midgardsblot just happened in Norway. It's, one of the biggest modern pagan festivals in Norway today, and it happens in August
Mm.
every single year. And is that tied to something historic? No, but I think there's something within our DNA, within our ancestry, that tells us to have a certain type of thing in a certain type of year, whether
Yeah.
that's just our reaction to the environment around us. You look at Norway this time of year, it's endless sun. There is still lots of rain, but there's beautiful days. And so if you want to have a festival, if you want to have a celebration, you want to play, listen to music, you want to eat,
Mm.
drink, and party. If you want to have competitions, this is the time of year to do it. And I think that's why we
Yeah.
still do that as a culture now around the world, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good old knees up time of year, isn't it? And yeah, everyone naturally, when the sun is out, you just want to be with people, having fun. You're at the peak of yourself. Serotonin levels are up. It's yeah, it's a good time for that. The other thing to mention with, I found a few little bits from Celtic folklore was the idea of whipping up sun wheels. So this is possibly part of the solstice celebrations as well, but they would go up to the highest peaks, so the tors, the mountains, the hills, and they would take like brands of burning hay, straw, things like that, and whip it around their heads to create sun wheels. Absolute health and safety hazard these days. Don't try that at home, kids. But I quite like the idea of them going up, presumably to be closer to the sun at the top of these hills, to bring in the energy and the life force
Mm.
of the sun even more into the land, into their bodies, and to celebrate in a kind of wild, unhinged way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here in the mountains, Colorado. Like, I don't want the sun any closer, man. Like,
Yeah.
but I do,
Oh, send it
also,
over here. It's old in
yeah.
the UK.
Yeah, I'm like 8,000 feet closer to the sun than you right now, so I'm good. But yeah, I think in general, when we start going to the tipping end of summer, August, the summer is we're declining, faster and faster into the autumn months, and so I can definitely
Mm.
see people trying to harness that power for a little bit longer before we have to give it back up into the darker months.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's that last desperate sort of bid for the sun, isn't it?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. How long do
Um,
you have before it actually turns like the weather starts turning shit again? Like you really only have like a month, right?
it's already turned, to be honest, today. I'm hoping it's just one of those little warnings from nature, like, make the most of this, folks. But it feels very autumnal in England today. And,
Yeah.
that's not good. But we normally get quite a late summer now, so September should be all right as well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also
We'd
interesting,
hope.
August, I like to look at everything in comparison to like the ancient ways and how we live life now.
Yeah.
This is also the time of year for, most people where kids go back to school, the summer holidays are over. And
Yeah.
that seems to be a reoccurring theme in history is the summer holidays of,
Um,
needing kind of return to something in August, like seems to be something there.
yeah.
Maybe that's just a modern idea because of like the school systems and stuff like that. But yeah, it is
Yeah.
interesting that August, it doesn't feel necessarily spiritual to me. Like I don't feel any spiritual connection to this time of year. It does just feel very like life based, like living life is at its peak in
Yeah.
months.
Getting all your achievements done as well, whilst you've got that vigor of the sun in the body, like sort of really working hard, doing that final push before, the autumn starts calling people back indoors, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And something, asked with like Lughnasadh, like what else did you do? So you bake the bread. What else?
Yeah. So we had this lovely, we did a big fire and everyone shared their achievements. And then we basically wanted to do a bit more of a thoughtful ritual, but we were looking around. So I do this group with Loki, and he's another local in our community. And we were like, oh, we've lost them. They've all started chatting and socializing. We haven't quite finished yet. And then we were like, let's just roll with it. It's summer. Everyone just wants to chat and have fun. So it just turned into a really nice social, and everyone was playing music and vibing around the fire. And it was we were there until like the stars came out, and there was a bit of throat singing and kind of sound weaving around the fire later at night. It was beautiful, really
Yeah.
nice celebration.
Yeah, so what
Yeah.
kind of feeling did you get from that? Did you have like a connection to the divine, or was it more of a community feeling?
Do you know what? For me, Lughnasadh is a community
Hmm.
celebration. Although we're bringing in the energy of Lu, and also celebrating his mother, because the traditional story behind Lu, the god Lu, was that his mother cleared the fields in order for the agriculture to take place and to begin, and then she died, presumably from exhaustion from all of that. And Lu created the assembly of Lughnasadh, as a celebration of her hard work.
Hmm.
So it's a lot about celebrating the community's hard work.
Yeah.
So when we're coming together, it felt like, yeah, let's really celebrate each other. So not only are we bringing in the energies of the sun and, Lu and the memory of Lu's mother and agriculture, but we're going to celebrate each other's achievements. And, that real strong bond of community that makes a town what it really is, knowing that you all have each other's backs, and knowing that you all are vital threads in each other's, lives, actually, in some way.
Well,
So that felt quite powerful.
Yeah, and we can, bring that back to, idea this time of year being timed to Thor in particular is, or for those pretentious people out there, Thor.
Oh, is that how you're supposed to say it? Surely not.
Yeah, because it's like the weird, Thuriza, so it's like the line with the little circle in the center, so it's not TH, it's Thor.
Oh.
Yeah, but whatever. But anyways, so with Thor, one of his big stories is boasting, and so a lot of Thor myth and Thor rituals involve boasting. And so this time of year, if it was tied to Thor, which I would say that August would probably be the best month to give to Thor, because this is also the time of year we see a lot of storms as well. And so it kind of would make sense. And again, in Norway, it rains a lot, but when it rains, it storms. And even here in Colorado, on the other side of the planet, 8,000 feet in the air, we get afternoon storms. It'll be beautiful every single morning, and then without fail, every single afternoon there will be a storm. And so
right,
I do think that yeah. And so I think that's very tied to him. And especially here, I'm looking in the mountains, coming down from the Jotuns, and he was fighting the Jotuns during the day and then rescinds back into the valley in the evening. There's something to that. And so I think, there would definitely be time to boast. I've done all this work, and we were even doing that before this call. You were like, look at you, you've done this vision quest, you've done ayahuasca. And so, this probably, I've done all the big adventures this year. Fuck, I don't want to do any more crazy things this year. I'm good.
Yeah. Time out for Jacob now.
Yeah, so if I was an egotistical Viking, I would, get on the table with my flagon of mead, and I'd be like, I went to Ecuador and did ayahuasca. I did the sweat lodge. I did a vision quest. What did you do this year, you pansy?
God, yeah, it's a whole different thing, wasn't the Valence way of being? Yeah,
I don't know what kind of year they would have. Me, I don't like focusing on the Viking Age too much, but like I was saying, this is the time of year that the Viking, summer was the time they went and raided. I don't quite know what the time they would have returned, but I would imagine it would have been August to September they would have started returning home, or they were going to stay, because I think the crossing was 2 weeks to get from Scandinavia to England, and especially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, especially if they were on the West Coast, if they were raiding Scotland, Wales, or Ireland. I think most of them had to winter because it just took so long to get back. But I would imagine August, September would have been the times to go back before the winter set in.
Interesting. So they'd have been pumped full of their sort of boastful stories about who was the greater warrior and things like that. So that does tie into the Lughnasadh theme as well, because it's believed that maybe sports day. You have sports day in America.
Most sports start this going into this time of year.
And the Olympics and things like that, right? It's all this time of year. That all might have its roots in Lughnasadh, which was also a celebration of competitive games. So you would compete to see who was the strongest in the village as well. And it wouldn't be like a negative thing. It was actually kind of a fun, joyous thing to challenge each other, challenge each other's strengths. So it's interesting how that feeds into it as well, that these warriors would have been coming back to the land with their stories and their prowess at this time of year.
Oh, yeah. So the traditional ancient Greek Olympic Games were held between August 6th and September 19th.
Right. Yeah, so same sort of time. Isn't that interesting? It seems to be a universal kind of theme.
Yeah. Side note on that. This is, when we talked about this episode, I wasn't going to talk about the Vision Quest too much, but I just had a weird thought I want to share. because my Vision Quest video comes out in like a month and a half from this video coming out, just because, all the videos I've made and editing and all that stuff. But something I just thought of is like, how fucking crazy is it that I was like, I wonder when the traditional ancient Greek Olympics were. Let me do my little internet search. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, there's the answer. How crazy is that, man? Like, the Greeks would lose their mind. Our ancestors would like lose their mind over that kind of shit. Like, you can just search things. You can ask this like ambiguous cloud, and it gives you answers. Like, what?
I know. Weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Like
So weird.
Something I've started doing a little bit more is I've been carrying around like a little pocket notebook, and I started doing this a few weeks ago. I've done it throughout my life, but during the Vision Quest, it was so helpful. Like if I just had a question, I didn't have Google anymore. I wasn't just able to like look it up, like what's this? And I would just write it down. Like, I just have like madman scribblings in here. Like, it literally looks like a crazy person was like writing in this thing. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something to that, and pondering things. I mean, shoot, I've been back for 3 days, and I can't tell you how many times I've Googled something again. So I think it's definitely something that we take for granted. I think it's something we abuse, and I think we need to ponder more. So this is my challenge to you, listeners. Instead of just Googling something right away, ponder it a little bit. That's my...
So true. It's like fast food thinking, isn't it? In a way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's something to it again with like the Druids. The Druids are big into the memory. Our memories are shit.
I know. Our ancestors must be so proud.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, and that would have been another thing too. Again, like with the boasting, but also with like recanting your tales of what were you doing when you were sailing across, or what were you doing this summer? You see someone for the first time, and you're boasting, but also telling the story of your life. And I feel like, again, we're kind of losing that to the internet, is, oversharing our lives of, constantly, like, what were you doing today? What were you doing every single day? Snapchat, every moment. Sometimes it's nice to not see someone for a long time and get to catch up.
Do you feel like we're going to lose the art of storytelling because of that?
I don't think we're necessarily going to lose. It's just going to change. And I think it's going to change into something we don't like, or loses its soul. Yeah, because like even like the Vision Quest, I made a video about it, but like I didn't record during the Vision Quest itself. Like I recorded before it. I recorded literally the first morning and then after, because and like a lot of the stories of the Vision Quest, I won't share on a video. I'll share in person, or like you catching up before this. There's certain things that we need to reserve for I tell this story in person. And yeah, I do think we're losing that. And I think we do need to, that was something we were talking about before, is, setting boundaries for yourself. And I think you need to set boundaries for your storytelling. Like, no, I don't tell this story to anyone online. I tell this story in person, or, at least in space.
Because I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, but my short-term memory is absolutely shocking. So, and I think it's because we almost know that we've shared it already. Like we put something on Facebook, this is what I did today, this is what I did the next day.
Yeah.
So when someone asks me, how was your week? I'm like, I don't know, I've forgotten about that. That was 6 days ago. Like it's really weird. Whereas I suppose our ancestors would have had the bandwidth to be like, okay, this has got to be a story that I tell around a fire. It's got to be, first of all, charismatic. I can't get any details, and it's going to be summarized in a way that's interesting.
Right.
And so that I think their heads and their memories would have been so different in that relaying and retaining of information about their and reflections about it.
And you're going to alter it too. Like every time you tell a story, you embellish things, you change it, because you're like, oh, this should be a funny moment and no one laughs. And the next time you're sitting there thinking like, I'm going to change how I tell it next time to make people.
This is how myths are created, folks.
100%. I know, we're definitely going on a tangent here, but I've been really big into talking about like myth in general, because that's a big thing on like the Vision Quest, is what is your myth? What is the myth of your life? And that's one of the things you sit there and you reflect on, is the myth of your life, and the hero's journey and the return. What dragon are you slaying, and all this stuff. And I know that's big into like Joseph Campbell is like really big into like slaying the dragon and figuring out what that is for you.
I love that. I use that with a lot of my clients, the hero's journey, to map out the journey of therapy that I take with somebody.
Yeah.
Because it's that whole thing of it's not even slaying the dragon. Sometimes it's actually like befriending the dragon.
Mm.
But I love how in all of the mythology, so whether it's, you know, like the Celtic or the Norse stuff, there's Joseph Campbell's absolutely right. That sort of layout for the hero's journey is woven into every single story, where, you know, someone will have outgrown the village, they'll embark upon a journey, they'll be given a task to face something dark in the underworld normally, and it's always a metaphor for the thing that they need to face and confront in themselves or befriend or integrate in themselves.
Mm.
And then once they've got that gold, they can return to the village and distribute it among the community.
Ooh.
So there's always a happy ending, and it's always like, for me, it's always like, okay, you've had a really bad experience, or you've had a difficult childhood, or you've had a traumatic event. How can you transmute that through the hero's journey into the gold, something that you can then offer to the village, to your people, to your world? And how wonderful that journey is woven into stories from, you know, ancient stories, and still seen today in things like Lord of the Rings, or, you know, anything, any
Yeah.
sagas.
Yeah, my brain explosion moment, because, like, you know, one of the main bases of this podcast is talking about the seasonal changes, and the hero's journey can literally be laid on top of, you know, the seasonal changes as well. And the summer is the
Yeah.
time of slaying the dragon or facing the dragon, because you're facing the hardship
Oh,
of life. And then at Lughnasadh, at the return, you're bringing back the gold, you're bringing back the gift, and that's what the celebration of Lughnasadh is about. Boom, episode over.
and it's done. It's a wrap.
Done, yeah. You're like, look at me, I slayed the dragon, I fought the dragon. That's what that celebration's about. It's a
It is. It
celebration of
absolutely
slaying
is.
the dragon.
It's that, or recounting the story to the community and bringing the gold and the literally the sunshine, the gold, the honey, the bread, everything that you can
Yeah.
offer from your hard work. Yeah, it really is that. And I think that's so woven into the human spirit that isn't something that will ever just belong to the past. I think we will, like our ancestors have done, that's been something we carry in the bones of our stories since time began, and it always will, I
Yeah,
think.
I think we have that calling in us. And I think, you know, the greatest challenge we face in our modern era is the distraction from that calling. Just like we were talking about before, we honestly should probably start recording our beginning conversations, because we do say good things. But, you know, talking about like how people can't be alone these days, and preparing for a vision quest, you know, it's 88 hours I was alone. And, you know, some people can't do that for 15 minutes. And,
Yeah.
you know, of course, you're not going to know what your hero's journey is. Of course, you're not going to be able to face the dragon if you can't even be
Yeah.
alone for 15 minutes. And it's not your fault. Oftentimes, it's societal pressures, it's our technology, it's our distractions that are keeping you from doing that.
Yeah, we were saying, weren't we, how like problematic actually things like mobile phones are, this automatic thing that we kind of almost twitch. We have twitches now, I've noticed, like we can't leave it alone. We have to keep checking it, keep checking it, keep checking it. And, you know, when you look into the kind of the science behind what that's doing to the brain, I think it's giving, is it like serotonin hits or something? Not serotonin, like
Dopamine.
dopamine hits every time we get a like, because our brain goes, oh, I'm accepted by the tribe. And so we actually form an addiction to our phones, and it's so tragic. And we're all guilty of it. I know
Yeah.
I certainly am.
Yeah.
So I would say, for anyone that's like a real pagan, the question our viewers are probably thinking is, how do we, as pagans, as people that are meant to connect to nature in this modern day world, remove ourselves from that and take ourselves on this hero's journey? So obviously, one answer to that would be the vision question that you've just done.
Yeah.
Literally going into the wild and being present and away from technology, so that you can make that inner journey into your psyche. I love that.
Yeah, I think the key term is rite of passage.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things we're losing again, is there was much more ingrained ideas of a rite of passage in the past. Like now it seems like it's quickly fading away what that is to society. Like even I don't know about you, and I definitely want to hear thoughts on it too. Like for like an American, like the only rite of passage I can think is, you know, getting your first car. Like that's a big rite of passage. Going to
Oh,
college,
yeah.
you know, getting a degree. But that's not for everyone though. And that's the thing I've never liked
Yeah.
about the idea of college being the rite of passage is, you know, for someone like me who was more creative, honestly, if you're a creative person, college sucks. It's expensive. And if you have a creative
Mhm.
degree, you know, your chances of getting a well-paying job to actually pay off that debt that you pulled up, especially in America, it's like almost
Yeah.
impossible. Um,
Yeah.
and so
Exactly.
there needs to be a different rite of passage for a creative person in America.
Absolutely. And just even for men and women, there's not much, like in the olden days, there would have been sort of a tribal rite of passage about entering womanhood, and then the same with men. And it would be something to do with warriorship, I imagine, and that kind of heroic rite of passage there, stepping into manhood, protecting, providing for the community. And women, it would have presumably been about their first bleed and stepping into womanhood and being able to be a creator of
Yeah.
life and a nurturer of the community.
Mm.
But you're so right, we've totally lost that in modern day society. Like, where do we find that now, where women like gather and celebrate those things? I mean, in Glastonbury there's a lot of it, so I'm a bit biased here. We actually have those, we have like rites of passages for young teenage girls that are going through their first bleeds, and that's beautiful.
Mm.
And we're starting to see things like men's expeditions in the UK. I don't know if you have this much in America. It's a brilliant organization where they kind of take a load of men out into the mountains, and they go and like make fires, and I don't know what they do. I'm not a man, but all the kind of stuff. And that must feel like a real rite of passage for men. I would imagine.
Well, so this is going to be a slippery slope conversation, and I'm going to try to articulate my words well. I mean well in this conversation, and I hope everyone who listens to this, I mean well, and I hope I articulate it well, because it's something I've felt for a very long time. I don't talk about it often just because it's hard to talk about, is things like, like transgendered issues and what's, going on with, these kind of conversations. And one of the things I've always thought is there needs to be a rite of passage. Is
Yeah.
when we're growing up, as a biological male, there are minor rites of passage, getting beat up, how to stand up to bullies, what to do with puberty, what do you do when you're horny as fuck all the time. For women, the first bleed, what to do when you start getting gawked after by men, and a myriad of other things. I don't know because I didn't go through those rites of passage. And when you transition, okay, yes, you take hormones, yes, you go through surgery. That is a type of rite of passage for sure. I'm not denying that. But you are still missing out on the other rites of passage. And we haven't provided those as a culture to transgender. And I think because we're not talking about it, we're not instilling those things. And people like me, like I get scared to talk about it because I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to say that you're not a man because you go through the hormones or the surgery, but I think there needs to be more rites of passage, because I go through different small rites of passage every single day being a man. And that's something to men as well, something to women, is every single day we have to step up for our manhood, our womanhood. And that's not for someone who's transgendered. It's going to be different, but unless we start having those conversations, it's not going to get better. And I think if we started having those kind of conversations, we start kind of putting in those rites of passage that, hey, a men's group going out, this is a hardcore man's rite of passage, and someone who's trans can come, and that's how you get your manhood, is you go on this like hardcore expedition. I think that's going to be awesome, but we need to start having more of those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there was more of a role for transgender humans in, I think it's in Native American tribes, potentially have more words for the other genders and things like that. And they were considered as bridges between the masculine and feminine, which is quite an interesting take on it, that they're able to hold both energies in their bodies. So they would have had their own unique rite of passage for that, which is, it's like, and unless you're somebody that's actively very proactive in seeking the hero's journey and taking yourself off a rite of passage, like you've done actually, Jacob, with your vision quest. And I've done it. I did it around the same age. Sort of, I think I did the Camino, which is where you walk from France to Spain, and Vipassana is another good rite of passage where you go and meditate for like 10 days in silence. These are little things that can, really challenge the soul and the spirit to see what you're made of. But unless you're someone that's proactive enough to do that, you wouldn't know how to create that rite of passage.
Because we need those elders. That was the job of the elder, was to be like, I'm the elder, this is the rite of passage, here's the youth. And it was the bridge to that next stage. But we've lost that elder, we've lost that knowledge. And the elders become the internet now.
Yeah, it's a bit dangerous, isn't it? Because that's very broad. It's AI, in fact. Good Lord, it's ChatGPT. That's the new elder. It's made me realize like the importance that our generation actually have and hold of being pagans on the path, that are sort of learning and exploring how to reignite the old ways. But as we cross over, from, what do you call it, the summer of our lives into the
Yep.
autumn of our lives. Nice. As we cross over into that and we will become the elders one day, I imagine we're going to really have to look at how we implement that in community, how we actually go, okay, you've hit a certain age. This is what you're going to do at this certain age. You're going to go for a mountain trek, or you're going to gather with the women in the red tent. And to
Yeah.
have it almost as like an expected known, something that's just commonplace. Or yeah,
Yeah.
imagine if we got to like 15 years old at school and someone came in and went, right, you're 15 years old, all of you guys are going on a hero's journey,
Yeah.
and that's going to be your summer holiday. Like,
Well,
where was that?
yeah, from what I understand, the traditional Native American Vision Quest was for the youth, particularly for young men. And it was basically like when they turned like, the manhood age, like 16 to 18. And it was like, go and starve in the mountains and pray until the spirits give you a vision, and you don't come back until you get that vision.
Yeah.
And then you come back and now you are a man and you live your vision.
And don't they have a different name as well? They rename
Yeah.
themselves when they go out, so they actually come back in and step into a new identity.
Yeah. And that's kind of hard because like, that is part of like, if you read I think it's Stephen Foster is the writer of the Vision Quest book. And he kind of talks about that too, taking on a new name. It's kind of hard for me because like, again, we don't have that elder. If I had an elder over here telling me like, you're going to go up there and you're going to get a new name and don't come back to me until you get a new name. I'm like, yes, sir, I'm going to go get that new name now. And like, you're going to shove off.
Yeah.
But since I don't have that elder backing me up, I come back and I'm like, I think I have a new name. I don't know what it is. What do I do? Do I tell people my new name? It's Eagle Spear Dancer. Like, but you don't have that elder backing you up and confirming and validating what you went through.
Exactly. We're going to have to work very hard as pagans of this new revival, of this new generation, to instigate these kinds of rites of passage, I think, as we age as well.
And we as, younger people, as much as you're like, I'm a crotchety old witch, I've already done all my cool stuff. You're still in the summer. You're a bit.
Life for me.
Yeah, you're in your July. I would say like going into August, I would surmise. For me, I'm like just now into June. As far as my summer of my life, and we as young people still have to acknowledge that we're not elders yet. We are very lucky that the pagan revivals have been going on for a while now, and there are elders. And so typically the elders are shitty at the internet. And so people like us get more views. People like us get more of a voice because we're better at the modern technologies, but there are elders. And that's something I definitely want to acknowledge in this conversation because I've met them. They're just really shit at the internet.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no.
I was going to say, I wonder if this would be a good time to name any of our elder inspirations that we know of for our kind of ancestral, cultural wise men. Who do you consider to be a wise man or a wise woman of the Nordic kind of culture? Do you have anyone that you follow?
I mean, I would say someone like, the bands are a really big one to look at these days. And so like someone like Einar Selvik. Einar Selvik is like in his 50s, I think. I don't want to misquote that. But, he's been running around the heathen sphere longer than I have, obviously. And he's done ceremonies and rituals since the early 2000s and obviously has a very popular band. And then even before him, there was like people obviously that taught him. But again, like the knowledge gets drifted further back. And then there's someone like Hilmar Hilmarsson in Iceland. He's got to be in his 70s or 80s. And he's one of the original founders of the Icelandic Asatru Temple. But then even he had someone who was older than him, who was the original founder, and his name was something Sven Bjorn Bjornsson, I think was his name. And so like there's at least 2 generations of elders now, even in like heathenry. There's generations of people even further with the Celtic. There was people running around the 1800s doing Celtic stuff. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we've got Philip Carr-Gomm is one of my favorite.
That's when I was William Price in Wales, I think was his name.
Yeah.
He was like he was born in like 1800 and he was like considered one of the first like reconstructionist druids in Wales.
Okay, that's cool. Wild. There you go.
But he didn't even.
I was going to say that.
Oh, sorry, I keep interrupting you.
I was going to just say that the kind of 2 male and female elders that I always look to. One is much more local to us. She's called Dory Joy, and she considers herself like an ancestral craftswoman. But a lot of the stuff that she does is really, you know, you can feel it's really old, rootsy stuff that she's kept alive and preserved. And you can kind of go and make a drum with her or a rattle or learn some ancestral songs. Caroline Hillier is another amazing one that sort of ignited the flame of Proto-Celtic language in song and chant. She does some amazing workshops and rituals that I'm hoping to go to this year.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the Druidic knowledge, I really enjoy Philip Carr-Gomm. He does a really good what's it called? Tea with the Druid. It's a little podcast he does. And it's just like listening to somebody's granddad. And it's lovely because he's got a deep understanding of the kind of Celtic folklore ties to Druidry. And he used to be the main guy behind the Order of Bards, Obod.
Yeah.
The Bards and Druids, yeah.
How long Obod's been around?
It's fairly modern, I think. I think it began in the 60s, 70s maybe, and he took over, I think it might have been the 80s, something like that. So it's a fairly modern revamping of Druidry. But whenever I read stuff on their website, I've noticed it's incredibly well researched. It's there's not
So it was founded in 1964, but you figure that, you know, it's like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. That was 60 years ago.
Yeah, that is actually a long time ago. And of course, it would have been based on, you know, old things that have been passed down. So it is interesting to think where all this knowledge would have been preserved before that. I mean, you've got books like the Welsh Mabinogion it means the tale of youth. Yeah. So this is possibly a book that would have been handed to children and teenagers and to be like, you know, read these stories. They will speak to you and they will teach you how to become a man. They will teach you how to become an adult in this world. A lot of the stories, they have these kind of values and ethics and morals woven in. You read the stories and you think, oh, that was a bit obscure. But in the subconscious, you kind of get it. There's this lesson that's gone in about, you know, valiance or honor, you know, and integrity. Yeah. So I think it's quite possible that those are the Celtic folklore stories that would have been passed down as part of rites of passage through storytelling. Yeah.
Do you think there's any evidence within like Celtic myth of rites of passage and what that would look like?
Oh, literally, most stories in the Mabinogion are exactly that. There's always a hero's journey. Somebody goes out to go and, you know, rescue something. I mean, if you think of the story of like Bran the giant, and he creates a bridge out of himself so people can pass over him, and he ends up getting beheaded, but his head sings wisdom for so many hundreds of years after. It's woven in with the story of self-sacrifice and dying in honor, which would have been more important in those times, of course. Yeah. So that would have possibly been, you know, these are stories that, although they were written in medieval times, I imagine they would have been preserved and passed down orally long before that.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and thinking about like the Norse, I think that's one of the reasons so many people are attracted to Odin, but don't necessarily know why. And I think it's because most of the Odinic stories are rites of passage. Even the Vision Quest is basically within Norse mythology and surviving in Odin, because when he took up the power of the runes, he fasted for 9 days and 9 nights while suspended from the world tree. And then on the final night, the vision of the runes. And so on the final night of the Vision Quest, you make your prayer and you take up the vision and your purpose, and then you return with your message. He returned with the runes. And so, you know, that's one of the things I love. And I mentioned, of course, in the Vision Quest video, is like, there's so many pieces of evidence. I mean, even within Christian myth, you know, there's the, you know, climbing up to the mountain to commune with God, and then Moses coming down with the 10 Commandments. So this idea of going out, fasting and suffering and praying to receive something is part of global culture, really.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so fascinating about the Nordic connection. I completely forgot about him fasting.
Yeah.
So you've kind of done an Odin there, Jacob.
Well, yeah. You know, my channel's name is The Wisdom of Odin.
I know. But it must be quite cool to finally have embodied that on some level, you know, because fasting is a trip in of itself. It's really taxing on the body and the mind and the spirit.
Yeah.
You know, it's highly recommend it if you're in good, healthy condition to begin with. You know, there's no medical complications.
There's no such thing as perfection. You know, I'm not the perfect, sense of health. And so it's that balance of like, you want to be safe and not die, but you're going to feel like you're dying. And so you need to understand, you also feel like you're dying.
Yeah, we did that as a bit of a rite of passage. And it was actually during lockdown. We were like, what do you do in lockdown? You know, how do you make fun? And we were like, why don't we try fasting for a few days as an experiment? So we all we picked dandelion as the plant we were going to work with, and we just juice fasted off dandelion for 4 days. And the first day, I mean, there's all this drama of everyone kind of being like, "Oh, I'm so hungry! Oh my god, I want chicken!" You know what I mean? Like,
all the food fantasies, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, you have to break through your human, like, the things that you're used to, your luxuries. But then by day two, we were quite tired, but we were quite accepting of it. We sort of surrendered to the fast. But by day 3 and 4, something miraculous happened, which was we all started doing housework, projects. We had this like insane rush of energy, which couldn't be explained
You
because
just
we
want to
hadn't
keep yourself
eaten.
busy.
Maybe it's that, maybe it was a distraction from the mind, but it almost felt like we had this clear channel for the first time. We were like just clear. We hadn't got food to digest, and we were able just to like crack on with anything. Like we'd moved all of our blocks out the way of ourselves. And on the 4th day, we went into meditation more, and we sort of sat in ceremony and tranced out a little bit with drumming and singing, and had these beautiful kind of hallucinations, because at this point you're kind of tripping a bit because you're hungry, you know. But I remember seeing things like having a lot of realizations about the sun and the moon and the teachings of dandelion, because it has those 2 phases of the fluff head and the yellow petals.
Oh yeah.
And it was a lot about finding balance between shadow and light, the kind of light work and the shadow work. But the insights we had were incredible. So even if you can't take yourself out into the wilderness, even just doing like a juice fast from home, I would consider that a rite of passage or a heroic journey, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, with everything, intention is everything. If you're, doing a fast and you're just sitting there watching Netflix the whole time, it's not gonna be the same as doing a fast and praying the whole time. Because that was a big thing. The Vision Quest is, it was kind of cool because you kind of just intuitively start to pray and sing. Like there would be moments I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm bored. And then like, I wouldn't even think about it. I wouldn't think like, you need to go pray. I would just get up and I would grab my rattle and I would just sit there. And I had a bunch of songs written down that I knew I wanted to sing. And I just sat there and I sang for hours. And yeah, I just felt like I never actually told myself, you're going to go do this. I just did it. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. Imagine if you were at home doing that, like you probably would have missed that opportunity because your mind would have gone, you know what, let me just check Facebook one more time, or let me just read that last chapter of that book or whatever.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's where that elder comes in, or that's something that tells you need to do it this way. Because if you tell someone like, do a juice fast, I'm not saying you're wrong here, but, do a juice fast in your house. They're like, great. And yeah, they plop down on that couch, they sit there, they watch Netflix, and not to mention the temptation of the kitchen as well, having your kitchen there. You have to like almost get rid of all the food in the house to not be tempted. Like my Vision Quest partner said at one point he saw like a chipmunk like land next to him, and he was like eating nuts, and he was like, you son of a bitch, like just sitting there. And then all of a sudden he was like, then I wanted to eat the chipmunk. And so if he's over here thinking about like eating the chipmunk, if you got a bowl of apples and bananas and granola in the house, it's gonna be a lot harder to like fully fast if you just got that laying around. Yeah.
That's true, actually. Yeah, you do have to kind of prepare yourself. I suppose it tests willpower more, though. Maybe that's part of it. That's like a lesson in integrity in of itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like
I thought about bringing like a really good looking sandwich with me and like placing it in the center of my altar space and just having to sit there and starve while looking at the sandwich.
Oh my God. So brutal. Oh my gosh.
Just like smell, like get as close as I can and like smell it and like lick it a little bit and just to see like what happens.
Oh my gosh, so funny. But yeah, there's so many things. I think people are striving for their own personal hero's journey, and to work out how do you access that, where do you go to for it, what would it even look like. But that internal desire to adult, like how do you adult, like okay, like you're 18, but what rite of passage have you gone through to make it known to yourself?
Yeah.
And makes me wonder if maybe like therapy, like a lot of people actually go to therapy to invoke a hero's journey as well.
I think it's
I've done that a few times where I'm like, I want to get a little bit deeper with myself and like really look at my psyche and kind of meet any goblins or like unknown shadows that I haven't seen yet in
yeah.
myself. So you've got the internal hero's journey that way as well.
Yeah, I think, therapy, from my understanding, I haven't done therapy really too much. But I've done like, shamanic stuff. But I think it's really good at making you see the goblins or see the dragon, but you still have to be the one to face it. And I think that's what the misconception of therapy and things like that is they think that or even shamanism or healing is that it's going to just fix your problems. And it's like, it reveals them to you. It can give you the tools to face them, but you still have to be the one to face it in whatever way it needs to be faced.
Absolutely. It's just like the plant medicine thing as well. We've talked about this before, haven't we? About, I think a lot of people are waking up to the plant medicine experience as to invoke a hero's journey in themselves as well. But it comes with this kind of glamorous idea of you're going to go and you're going to meet the dragons and you're going to come out and be an enlightened human being. But I mean, both of us have experienced this with ayahuasca. Like she would just show you your dragon and she'll be like, right, see you later, folks. And that's that. And the integration of ayahuasca is the real work. That's where the real transformation happens.
Well, I think it's the same thing.
It just makes me think, is this why plant medicines are really getting more popular now?
Yeah.
Is it because people are striving for the hero's journey in themselves?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the struggles, again, of our modern society, because, we can talk about the dark side of the rites of passage. While they're still not very prominent, they exist. And I think we seek them, and we see things like ayahuasca. And, I think that's much more common. I don't hear people talk about vision quests very often. I think they got popular in like the 70s and 80s, but I think they kind of died in popularity. Because things like ayahuasca are much more like, there's your dragon, and it's psychedelic and it's wild looking, whoop, 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 and all the crazy stuff. And it's more fun. Like ayahuasca is more fun than Vision Quest. I can tell you that now, from experience. Vision Quest is hard, man. But because we have such accessibility and such variety in life and the ability to travel, like if you just lived in a village and you had one shaman that gave you ayahuasca, and you were like, I think I need, I see the dragon, but I need to do more ayahuasca to slay the dragon. The shaman, if you have that one shaman, that one medicine man, it's like, that's not what you need to do, and stops you. You have no other option. You have no other option. But now you could have a shaman tell you like, no, I actually don't think that's good for you. And you're like, well, I'm going to go to the shaman in Arizona and ask him instead. And fly to Arizona. Like, yeah, sure, I'll give you ayahuasca. And so people, because I've met people that have done ayahuasca 8, 9, 10 times. And I'm like, maybe it's not your answer then.
Yeah, exactly. Like all these plant medicines are just way showers. Then we have to walk the rest of the journey ourselves. They're just, it's fascinating. And it does make me question if it's become like the fast food version of the hero's journey. Yeah. It's like the fast track, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think again, we've struggled that in our world of convenience is people are looking for the quick way out. And that's something I really hammer in the Vision Quest video, is that this can be dangerous, of course. It's something that needs prep time. It's something you can't watch this video today and do it tomorrow. You can start walking that path tomorrow, but you literally can't watch a video and do a Vision Quest the next day. It's like dangerous, stupid, and it's not going to help you. And then with everything, you can't just do the Vision Quest and then expect it to be that, or do the ayahuasca and expect it to be that. Like you said, the integration. And the integration is going to be so much longer than the actual like peak moment.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, any new brain pathway that's forming, so any new habit, any new pattern of behavior takes on average 3 months to kind of get rooted in the brain. So a hero's journey experience should take you at a bare minimum 3 months. It can't just happen overnight. It's it's deeper than that.
And even again, bringing that back to like the transgenderism and things like that is, I want you to succeed. If you're a woman that you want to be a man, I want you to succeed, but I'm not going to lie to you and say you can do that tomorrow. It's something that
Yeah.
takes time. It's just part of the hero's journey. It's got prep time. It's
Mm.
got the peak moment. It's got the integration afterwards, and it's got the challenges and everything that comes in, after that. And I think we're lying to people by saying that it's something that can happen like that.
Yeah.
You can start that
Yeah.
process tomorrow. You can start it like that, but it's a journey, just like everything else is in life, and it takes time. And again, I want to see those pathways made forward for people. I want to see those conversations. Bless you. Just like with paganism, just like with Celtic paganism, with life, is we do seek
Mhm.
those fast food options rather than the actual work that's going to make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's I mean, we're hoping, aren't we? We're gonna hopefully do our retreats towards the autumn.
Yeah, we need to figure that out.
And we do need to figure it out. But I imagine that's going to have a few rites of passages, little moments that can conjure up a rite of passage or an initiation onto that journey, at least.
Yeah.
If somebody's just looking to begin their journey and they want a dramatic ceremony, we're going to be the people for that.
Yeah, and I think that's something, I've been leading ceremonies now for, nearly 5 years. And again, I didn't have really an elder. I might have learned from books or, watching Heilung or something like that. But a lot of it still was exploratory because in America, especially, we don't have I can't drive 30 miles and be like, hello, Mr. Norse Pagan Elder, can you teach me the ways of Odin? Like, it doesn't exist. And so a lot of it's been exploratory. And I realized very quickly that these very trance-inducing rituals, calling to Odin, can really wake people up, which is
Yeah.
great to be woken up. But then you still
Yeah.
need to continue to have that pathway forward to continue to work. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people globally in spirituality and paganism, they get that wake up moment and it feels fucking good, just like ayahuasca,
Yeah.
just like a rush of euphoria. But then they don't know what to do afterwards because we don't know what to do afterwards. And then you lose it. You're like, well, that euphoria is gone. I'm not getting that anymore, so it's not for me. And that's sadly, it's not the case. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Ah, bless the human race. Because we're all a little bit lost. I think everyone's just trying to search, aren't they, for that feeling of something with like real gravitas, real meaning.
Yeah.
To find meaning in life, it's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, meaning and purpose. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's one of the big things with Joseph Campbell as well, and with the Vision Quest is finding purpose.
Yeah.
And that's something I talk about with young men a lot, because I think men, you could counter me with this for sure, please do. But I think men in general, if men don't have a direct purpose, they shrivel up and die very quickly.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot. I've witnessed that a lot in
Yeah,
men. Like for a man to sort of not be able to understand how they can provide or contribute to the community in a
yeah,
in a way that makes them feel masculine, then I think you start seeing depression in men and things like that. And it's the same with women as well. I mean, we perhaps shouldn't generalize. I can only really speak from my own
right,
experiences.
right, right.
But I think if I think about times where I felt particularly low in life, it's where I've lost sense of how I can nurture in some way in the community
Yeah,
because it's sort of programmed into my epigenetics to nurture as a woman.
yeah,
Um, not to say men can't nurture as well, of course,
yeah, of
but
course. Yeah,
there's certain. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it brings it back to arguments about kind of social roles and all of this. But what I always sort of think is that, beyond what we know as social roles in the modern day world, we have thousands of years of acting a certain way that's kind of programmed into our DNA that we're kind of used to defaulting into.
yeah.
And
Yeah, and obviously, the world we live in is very new.
yeah,
It's so new. The things that we can decide to do. I mean,
yes,
I don't necessarily love the term privilege, but we live in a privileged time. The vast majority of us live in a time where you could be whatever you want to be. We can have conversations like this and not have to worry about starving tomorrow. And we
yeah,
can think about things like the hero's journey without fear of a lot. This is something that the most of humanity never had the opportunity to do. And so that's amazing. And
mhm,
so definitely reflect on that. It's so amazing. We even have the opportunity to do this. And this is why I think we are stepping into an amazing time in humanity, with so many people being able to really think on purpose. And
yeah.
200 years ago, purpose was very different than purpose now. And nurturing is very different now than it was 200 years ago. And we have to
Oh
figure
my
out what
gosh,
that means.
yeah.
It doesn't
And the
necessarily mean go
absence
get the
of
9 to 5 job or feed the baby. It's different.
yeah, nurturing looks different for everyone, and providing looks different for
Yeah.
everybody, doesn't it? It's like Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, to go back to that point, it's purpose. So as long as you're finding your purpose, the thing that lights you up and makes you feel like you're contributing to the greater whole,
Yeah.
that's what lights a human spirit up. And without that, we end up a bit lost. That's what brings, I think that's when we start to see the rise in things like depression,
Yeah.
a lack of belonging, a lack of social cohesion. All of those things will naturally, raise depression and mental health problems in a society.
Yeah.
And that's something our ancestors just didn't have. Our
No,
ancestors
yeah.
had their roles. They knew like how to participate in community. They
Yeah,
weren't cut off by the internet.
yeah, they had very little freedom and choice of what to do with their life. Uh,
Yeah,
we have so much
yeah,
choice to do, and I think that choice also puts so much pressure on us of like to make a
yeah,
difference. But it's also okay to not have this great purpose or to make these great changes. Like if you just want to be a bartender and be the best bartender, fucking do it. If you just want
yeah,
to, take care of a family, do it. If you want to be a big business soup person, don't do it. But do it, if
yeah,
that's what you want to be. Yeah,
yeah.
it can be hard. And I think that's one of the things I was struggling with going into the Vision Quest is there are so
Mm,
many opportunities in life. It can be hard to choose which one to take then.
absolutely. It's overwhelming. And often we're led down a blind path of what we should be
Yeah.
choosing rather than what we actually have within us, what we actually want to self actualize into. And that kind of gold, that inner knowledge and wisdom can only really be found by going on things like vision quests
Yeah.
and sitting with yourself and being like, who actually am I? Who do I want to be in the world? What do I want to bring out of myself as an extension of myself to offer the community?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, absolutely.
I think I don't know. You probably didn't watch it, but I made a video. I very rarely talk about politics and things like that. But obviously, we're in another election year with, here in the U.S. and you just had an election year in the U.K. And obviously, shit's crazy, going crazy in the U.K. right now, just like it is everywhere. Like the world just always
Mm,
seems like it's an ever churning cycle of just madness, and it's hard to get a hold on it. And so I made a video because I was just really feeling like this heaviness, and I needed to get it out. And fucking Glastonbury, man, you guys made me into a dirty little hippie. And like video is like called like the solution to hate. And one of my big things is talking about love. And the only way to counteract this darkness is a positive force, and it's not piling more of this darkness and hate on top of it. Like it
yeah,
feels good to release hate because it's in you, and you're like, oh, I just need to get it out. Like I'm just so there's so much darkness, but it doesn't actually solve the problem.
yeah,
And
yeah.
some people misinterpreted that video as me being like, "We just need to all love each other, man." Like that's not what I meant. And I think this is where you combine the two is purpose. You can't have a
Yeah,
purpose built on hate. You have to build your purpose on love. Um,
absolutely. And you know what, Jacob, this speaks so much to like my reflection on my 20s because I was a real angry little activist and I would like use myself as a little mouthpiece to gob off about anything, whether it was like, like animal activism or, blah, 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 anything else, anything in London that I could like yell about at Parliament, I would. And in my 30s, I totally realized like that's not going to change anything in the world. Like what I can change is my immediate community
mhm.
and I can be creative. So that using that anger as a passionate spark to resolve things on a level that is actually tangible.
Yeah,
And I found that's looking to community again. So if we start to think of our community as just the kind of the town that we're in, we can be so much more effective. If everybody did that, imagine,
yeah,
that's where real change starts to show up in the world. And
yeah.
it brings us back to this idea of Lughnasadh, of
Mhm.
what are you offering your community? What can you bring from yourself to change the world on a small level, which isn't going to overwhelm you and which isn't just going to be about you yelling something into the abyss of the internet.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And something else I was reflecting on just today after actually is when we talk to spirits, it's like what do spirits tell us? Well, if you're talking to
Mm,
genuine spirits and you're out there in a vision quest, like you're just communing with, the sky, the sun, the earth, I don't know, I don't think the spirits would even ever tell you like the answer is hate. Like they would never be like, the
no.
answer is to go kill this person. The answer is to go discriminate
Yeah,
against this person or to hate the person you disagree with. The spirits, they tell
yeah,
you, the opposite. They tell you need to embrace this, that, the other thing. You need to teach, you need to speak. For me, what the spirits told me to do, get people to sing and dance. And that's what I'm going to do.
exactly,
That's how we're going to.
exactly. because I read somewhere a really good quote on the internet just yesterday. It said the opposite of depression isn't joy. The opposite of depression is expression.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you be creative in the world? How can you actually change it with a creative passion instead? And whether that's dancing and singing and creating more joy, that's a wonderful start, because when people get out of fear, they can actually like enjoy their lives and
So now what we need
become
to
the
do
best.
is we go to Parliament. We get a platform. We say, "When's the last time you sang and danced? When's the last time you sang and danced?" Like you look at all these
Come on.
stuffy people in their suits. It's like, get naked, let's dance. That's how we're gonna change shit.
Take the government for a high lung gig and give them a big dose of magic mushrooms. Can you imagine how different the world would be?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I mean, that's what council used to be. And I think that's one of the things that was, respectful about like native council here in America is, yes, they still had council. They would come together, they would discuss, but there was much more ceremony involved, much more spirits. The spirits were still considered like the ultimate messengers of council. And the ancestors, like you over here, you're the chief, doesn't matter. The ancestors are still bigger than you. The spirits are still bigger than you. And we've lost that, and we have to find it.
Absolutely. Here's to that, Jacob.
Yeah, I feel like we need to take a shot. Yeah. But that's probably a good way to end the episode. I mean, we've been talking for a bit now, so we didn't end up, originally we were going to talk about like community in general, which we did, but I feel like rites of passage is the theme on this one, which I think is nice.
Yeah, like the hero's journey, and it does completely tie into community, because it ends up with what are you contributing to your community, and the fact you can only get there through going on a hero's journey to understand what you can truly offer. So it ties in perfectly.
Like I said, I feel like we come into these things where like we have loose ideas and we just go.
We let spirit speak through us. Yeah, it's always good to go in with less of a plan with these things.
Well, very good. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Oh, sorry, I have to talk in the Kubi voice.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Tree of Life podcast. My name's Kubi May, and this is Jacob Todson, and we'll see you in the next episode. And be sure you check all of our links down below for all the things that we do. We do things such as workshops, retreats. Jacob's writing a bloody book.
All right. All right, can't do it anymore. Thank you all so much for joining us. Make sure you listen to us every month, and we'll see you in the next episode at the Tree of Life podcast. Bye.